Hello, my name is Tony. Where the Flight to the Phoenix is concerned, I am seriously biased. I never saw it on the big screen, only ever catching it on TV one Sunday evening in the early 70s. I was instantly enthralled and captivated by it, the premise and the execution. I fell in love with it. One of the best masculine-centric action-adventure movies I had ever seen. The passage of time has not dulled or diminished that viewpoint in any way. If anything, I like it more now than ever. It is an exercise in pure cinema, a prime and shining example of the art. That's the problem right there. Makes being objective and critical of it a little more difficult. So much so that there was every possibility that any review I did was going to be little more than a tedious one-sided discourse in which I bang on about how brilliant it is for the duration. After all, who wants to tear down their beloved touchstones of the past? There's plenty of Russell T. Davises and Marvels out there to do that for you. With that in mind, I shelved the idea of reviewing it for the channel whilst I contemplated for a little while. Well, alright, for the last 4 years. Then I rewatched it recently and thought, for fuck's sake, snap out of it, you dithering asshole. You want to review it? Review it. Bugger Bogner and damn the tortellini. And with that, here we are. Based on the novel by British author Elliston Trevor, the film makes some cosmetic changes to locations and characters but generally follows the same direction of travel. A cargo plane is flying from a Libyan oil field to Benghazi, piloted by grizzled veteran flyboy Frank Townes, James Stewart, and his navigator Lou Moran, Richard Attenborough. It is carrying some heavy machinery and sundry produce, along with a mixed bunch of oil company employees and others either heading out for good or on leave. The plane is an old and poorly maintained junker that should have been put out to pasture years ago. Much like Townes and Moran, one could argue. In flight, the radio fails. The plane's engines are disabled when it encounters a violent sandstorm, and Townes is forced to make an emergency crash landing in the Sahara Desert. The survivors of the crash are stranded, miles off course with a dwindling water supply and limited food rations. Here we have an all-male ensemble cast of characters who, not to put too fine a point on it, are fucked. Thus begins a fascinating and masterful exploration of human frailty, inspired invention, and the dogmatic will to survive against the odds. Phoenix is a foundation stone in the bedrock of the survival adventure drama genre, and it's great. What makes it so great then? Well, let's start with the characters and the actors playing them. James Stewart epitomizes homespun American decency, underscored by dark undercurrents of tortured psychological complexity. Many of his characters were prey to uncertainty, misplaced guilt, and latent neurosis. Townes, who automatically blames himself for the crash, logging it as due to pilot error, shares much with the conflicted characters Stewart played in his psychological westerns of the 1950s. And no one does this stuff better. In direct support, Richard Attenborough, tear-pumping, over-effusive lovey or not, was one of the most underrated of British actors. He could channel the seething malevolence of a Pinky Brown in Brighton Rock or a John Reginald Christie in 10 Rillington Place just as easily and effectively as the sad, damaged humanity of a loser drunk like Lou Moran. Together, he and Stewart absolutely click and nail it as two world-weary friends, older, burnt-out men at the end of something, now facing the end of everything. A crafted and compelling on-screen relationship tinged with bruising poignancy and aching regret. As for the rest of the cast, they may well be stereotypes, but it's the skill of the actors playing them and the director directing them that succeeds in bringing them to life so vividly to a point where it ceases to matter. Peter Finch is Captain Harris of the British Army, a straight-up by-the-book military professional with a dash of compassion and a fatal sense of stiff upper-lip duty. His sergeant, Watson, Ronald Fraser, is the flip side of that coin, a cowardly, malingering malcontent with a chip on each shoulder. Oil company medic Dr. Renard, Christian Marquand, is escorting company foreman trucker Cobb, Ernest Borgnine, to Benghazi. Cobb seems likely to have what would have been termed at the time subnormality of intelligence. Nowadays, learning disability, I think. He has the mind of a 12-year-old kid, and even that kid don't want it back. He's experienced a mental collapse on the job and is being shipped off home. He's a bit resentful about it, to say the least. George Kennedy, always a welcome sight, is oil worker Bellamy. His friend and colleague Carlos Alex Montoya has a pet monkey in tow. Their friend and colleague Ratbag's Crow Ian Bannon is a belligerent, mocking and intolerant Scot, who, as events unfold, reveals evidence of a softer, more emotional centre. Veteran Hollywood actor of many a cop and cowboy B-movie, Dan DeRay is the anxious and jittery oil company accountant Standish. For good measure and some added sob story background stuff, there's the doomed Gabriel Tinty, a young man desperate to get home to his physically unwell wife in Benghazi. His leg is crushed by heavy machinery in the crash. Life expectancy therefore, zip. Finally, and most critically in the scheme of things, there is Heinrich Dorfman Hardy Kruger. Dorfman has been visiting his brother, an oil company scientist. To give some indication as to the nature of his personality, a trip to an oil field in a scorching, barren desert was his idea of a holiday. What a lovely vacation site to choose. Scoring well high on the old TripAdvisor ratings, I'd wager. Dorfman pronounces himself a German aeronautical engineer, a factor which is pivotal to the progress of the film. Dorfman is the most stereotypical character, packed to the very brim with all those automatic assumptions about Germans so prevalent in the fictions of the time. He is arrogant, superior, dictatorial, practical to the point of inhumanity, Vulcan-level logical, and driven to impose his will and survive whatever. But you will buy it because Kruger is so damn good, and comes hair's breadth close to outperforming everybody else. Weirdly, at times, he's the most relatable character, and it's a credit to Hardy Kruger that we occasionally see things from his perspective. Yeah, well, he's not wrong, you know. Aye, that's how it starts. After wandering around the wreck with a clipboard, taking notes, making calculations, what he proposes is they cannibalize the crashed plane and build a new one to fly them out of the desert to safety. He's even designed it, figured out how to connect the two intact wings to a fuselage, and how the men can be strapped to the wings while Towns pilots the contraption. He's even factored in Gabriel's impending death, which will even the weight distribution if only he'd hurry up. Man, that's fucking cold, even for a master race jockey. And that Dorfman ain't much better. Advised by Renard, Towns eventually agrees, if for no other reason than it will give everyone something to do to distract from the inevitable as they waste away. So does the Phoenix rise triumphantly from the ashes? Who will get to live to see? It's a tense, eventful and compelling journey, getting there to find out. Robert Aldrich, as I have no doubt mentioned elsewhere in other reviews, is one of my all-time favourite directors. I won't burn time on covering that ground again here. One of the reasons I rate him, though, is a particular timeless theme he enjoys exploring in his films. He likes to put people into impossible situations, see how they face those challenges, how they react, how the group dynamics coalesce and shift, and how they wind up in the end. The Dirty Dozen, Too Late the Hero, Ulzana's Raid, later examples of body placed under immense stress, pressured in dire circumstances, put under the microscope and run through their paces. The Flight of the Phoenix is a great place to start. From a time when visual storytelling and character arcs were considered essential components of a film, Aldrich sets up his playground where such things can be delivered in spades. The crash itself plays out as the intro credits roll because it's just an event or device to set the rest of the film up. The main emphasis is trained upon how a disparate bunch of listless quitters are galvanized to action by an idea, a common goal, to become a functioning team working together to save their individual and collective skins. It's not all plain sailing though, far from it. Harris decides to march out to the desert to get help. The army has acquainted him with marching and he is apparently very good at it. For every argument Frank and Liu throw his way to dissuade him, he counters with a solution. His cowardly sergeant fakes a twisted ankle so he doesn't have to go with him. Carlos signs up in his place. It ends in tragedy. The childlike Cobb wants to go along as well, like it's going to be some sort of kid's excursion to the seaside. He's well up for it, so much so that the other men must curb his enthusiasm with physical restraint. This doesn't stop him sneaking off after them, however, which then results in Frank taking off after Cobb, his feelings of guilt and responsibility over the fates of the men escalating. Dorfman is pissed now because they've lost their pilot, which sort of fucks up his plan of escape. Frank finds Cobb dead from heatstroke and dehydration. Harris ends up back at the plane, exhausted, found by his sergeant who leaves him to die on the ground and doesn't inform the others. They find him later and he survives this bit. Carlos, however, has been lost to the desert. Dorfman is caught taking more than his allotted water ration. He reasons that he's been working harder than anyone else, so needs it more. He agrees not to do it again, but insists that everyone now needs to work twice as hard to get the plane built. You can glimpse in microcosm how the Third Reich might have worked out right here. A band of Arabs rock up nearby and make camp. They're likely a criminal raiding party. Harris decides to parley with them. There was a common term used as an insult when I was a kid. Someone behaved a bit lively and, well, batshit nuts. They were called a mad Arab. You mad Arab! There was a good reason for it. Anyhow, Dr. Renard goes with Harris to engage the camel jockeys. Next day, the two men are found with their throats cut. That's the reason. Then Gabriel, realising he's fucked took a while, commits suicide. The load is getting lighter by the minute, but the depression and weight on morale is getting heavier, and it's hardly conducive to a party atmosphere amongst the gang, who now have the threat of the Arabs returning as an added incentive to shift the work up a gear. The killer twist comes when Dorfman reveals to Frank and Lou that although he is indeed an aeronautical engineer, it is in fact for model aeroplanes, toys. Horrified even when Dorfman protests that making model aeroplanes is even more exacting than the real thing. I mean, I used to fucking doubt that, but with Boeing's current track record, Frank and Lou decide to keep it from the others and hide their personal devastation. It's all carefully plotted and structured for maximum impact by screenwriter Lucas Heller. Aldrich directs accordingly, his attention on the effects of the predicament on the men physically captured as time progresses. Faces are increasingly unshaven, sunburnt, blistered, and their toil becomes punishing, excruciating and fraught. They are dying, yet there is that one last grueling push to tow with tethers like weathered and straining mules the reconstructed plane to a flat stretch of land that can serve as a makeshift runway. Cinematography is by Joseph Byrock, who coincidentally lends Stewart's 1946 classic It's a Wonderful Life, an altogether more wintry affair. The vivid colour palette, bright and searing, seems to radiate pulsating heat from the screen, whilst Frank Duvall's score soars magnificently in all the right places, alternatively adding a slightly off-key spacey ambience to some of the quieter dramatic scenes. First time viewing the launch of the reconstructed plane is a real nail-biter. The Kaufman engine, as it is known, needs kicking into life with a starter cartridge. They've got 7. After 4 fail and Frank fires 1 to clear the cylinders, you will be on the edge of your seat. Aldrich allows for a triumphant and uplifting finale, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I'm not one to knock that. Where others may disagree, I'm happy to claim it's one of the best survival adventure dramas I've ever seen. Sure, the dialogue is cheesy and dated now, but the changing interactions and attitudes of the characters as they collaborate and work together is almost life-affirming. Traumatic events and hopeless circumstances can bring out both the best and worst in people, which is witnessed as Aldrich gradually narrows the window to that final bid for freedom. I've always loved it, especially in the face of those detractors who insist that mechanically the plane wouldn't have worked. Fuck them, it worked in the film and it worked in my head. Flight of the Phoenix didn't fare especially well with the critics of the day and failed at the box office. It needed to take an estimated $11 million to break even, but only racked up approximately 5. Considering audience previews were very positive, Aldrich was surprised. He wasn't the only one. I spent years thinking it was a box office hit, purely because it was so good. When older me found out differently, I was shocked, initially, until I figured the awful truth is that some films are just too good for the public. Bloody Philistines. Let me warn you, to prevent a fatal choice being made, that there was an entirely unnecessary remake in 2004 with Dennis Quaid and Hugh Laurie. This being the 2000s, a female character was invented as one of the crash survivors. She was played by Amanda Otto. I suppose the arguments for inclusion and diversity and equality were starting to form around then, and a further argument for justification was made along the lines that an extra dimension was added by the introduction of a strong female character to the mix. They gotta be strong, you know. Don't need saving by no man, no way, no how. Girl power, baby. The only extra dimension it added was the extra dimension of fuck all in the fledgling universe of the token tick box nebula. The film was a pale imitation of the original and missed the entire point, like an Elon Musk space rocket misses leaving the atmosphere intact. Or the ground, come to that. Fucking billionaire tech for you. If you haven't seen it and survival adventures are your thing, it's one of the greats, essential viewing. It boasts a stellar cast, terrific acting, stunning visuals, literate script, and muscular direction. Dated, old, technically creaky here and there, but the creative quality evaporates those complaints like camel piss on hot Saharan sands in summertime. No lie. Right, must try and find me a copy of Sands of the Kalahari next. Who'd like to see a review of that? Well, don't all shout at once, will you? Eternal thanks for your time and attention. Feel free to do whatever you choose to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, check out my early access Patreon thing, or even make a welcome financial contribution via the thanks button. I'm very much in survival movie mode now. 2 likely candidates from my dim and distant past I've got my eye on as we speak. We'll see how it goes, pilgrims.